Thank you. I know there's a long intro on a Tuesday evening. Good evening, and I'm happy to be here. I want the session to be interactive. You can stop me at any time, ask questions, and also share your comments. I don't know how many of you've seen the paper which was released sometime back by IDA on this whole topic. We spent quite a bit of time. It was almost an year work which culminated in this whole document put in place. So it's fairly interesting. We all debated a lot of sessions. So if you've got any feedbacks, this will be kind of an ongoing journey on cloud. I don't think it's going to stop anywhere. I think we can take this as the first cut, and then as policy gets shaped, we will do. So how many of you are from an end user environment? 1, 2, 3, 4, quite a few of you. And remaining, I would assume, or from a service provider, or you're interested in this topic. Let me give a bit of background of Singpost cloud strategy and where we have struggled and how this whole topic relates to us. Singpost actually, I joined 4 years back. Even before that, okay, I think their first cloud project was in 2011. Okay, their SAP used to be run on a private cloud, okay, which I thought was quite interesting, because coming from banking, I think 2012, 2011, if you're talking about cloud computing in banking, is like kind of no one even bother about what you are trying to do. But I think for us the biggest use case is our e-commerce business. Our e-commerce business runs on AWS. Okay, 100%. Every component of it is in public cloud. And touchwood, for almost 37 months, it has not even come down for a second. Okay, but the cost of doing that is going up. Right, cloud is no more cheap. If someone comes and tells me it's cheap, I have got enough business case with me to say that it is becoming expensive, because for the elasticity what you pay is significant. That's number one. Second, we started off a project where we wanted to move our entire data center into cloud. Okay, and all the applications which we developed in the last 4 years, we ensured that it is cloud compliant. If anyone is interested, we developed our own checklist to see when we build an application, what are the various things which we need to take into account, so that when we implement, there are no issues. But then the challenge is we never implemented our live environment in cloud, because we had a lot of spare boxes in our data center. Okay, so we did the dev and test, but then when it came to actual implementation, we did most in the data center. But when we went through this whole project of moving into cloud, we got into a lot of issues, and this set of slides will address, or I would say give an indication on some of the issues which we faced. So our RFP was, I was quite, a lot of people did not like me for the RFP release. We actually released a 1-page RFP. We said that these are our assets. We want to move to public cloud. Tell me how to do it. Okay, that's all it is. We never said the process of how we need to move to cloud, because my view was, if we knew how to move to cloud, then we will do it ourselves. Okay, that's number one. The second problem, which was very interesting, was every response came with a lock-in. Everyone said you need to sign for 5 years. I said, someone told me cloud means it's on demand. I need not sign into any contract. No, people said cloud is okay, but the services associated with it, has to be a contract. That means people could not separate the managed services versus the cloud infrastructure. So we went close to 8 months, and finally we said, we're not going to do this project. Okay. During that project, we had a number of issues, and that was the time I also, joined this group as part of the ITMA, in IDM. We said, if something happens, who's responsible? Okay, that is one of the biggest things which we want to nail down, because if you see a traditional data center contract, right, it very clearly says what is SLA, what happens when things break, if there is an issue, how the issue would be resolved, so on and so forth, fairly detailed. But when we moved on to the cloud model, we were not very sure who's responsible for what. Okay, and that was kind of a biggest challenge we had, and we continue to have. Right? I mean, if you really, if you're already on cloud, if you go and take the existing contracts and see, it's extremely vague. Okay, it does not say who's responsible and what is going to happen. That's kind of the context for this. And I would say that the context is also public cloud, because again, my thinking is, if you say cloud, it's public cloud. If it's private or hybrid, it's no different than from running a data center, right? Unless someone proves me otherwise, because the contracts are written in the same way. Instead of, I think, wherever there was boxes, people change into cloud, right? So this whole presentation deals about what happens when there is an outage. Okay, how does that whole process work? And imagine if at the national level, if you're going to put everything on a public cloud, okay, and if there is a serious issue happens, how do we resolve it? Because it is a genuine problem. I mean, it is just that we don't spend too much of time figuring it out, because even if you talk to my CEO at that point, the first question he asked me was, are we in cloud? And I said, yeah, we are in cloud, don't worry about it, right? Because if you're not in cloud, it is a problem, because people feel that you are not in recent technology. So there is a kind of perception which runs around. So as technologists, you cannot run away from this, because you have to do it. But then if there is going to be an outage and problem, then if you go and say that, this is what and that is what, people are not interested in listening to your explanations, right? So that's the kind of a background for this. Yeah, I mean, if you, this is very clear. I mean, I remember, I think WhatsApp was down some time back. Okay, I mean, I was saying Bing, but that was phenomenal, and I think I was in India at the time. But then, people were SMSing, asking others, is WhatsApp down? And that created a flood of SMS and then choked the network. Okay, so it's just, I mean, I was just like, what's happening in this world, right? And I think it is going to be more and more difficult, even if a service of this nature fails, right? I mean, it's because a lot of even business critical decisions are taken in these kind of applications today. I mean, I can be, we don't use WhatsApp so much. We still try to go through corporate systems, but I have seen small companies in which WhatsApp is when people really don't know what needs to be done next, right? People forget that you can actually use your phone to call someone. Okay, so this is the whole thing, right? So now you are in public cloud, you are running an application, an outage happens. So that's really the crux of this discussion we will have in the next half an hour or so. It is very, very complicated if you really read the contracts, okay, to say who's responsible for it. And in some cases, the challenge you also have is how DR works or how a business continuity works is not very clear at all. Okay, I'll give an example. I mean, you can take. I think it was AWS, or I think it's true for everyone, right? So they say that, look, if you run your primary on me, okay, so for some reason there is a outage on the primary, unless you have the secondary also with me as a service provider, I'm not responsible for anything. So my take on this was, we always thought that we will run primary with a partner A and BCP with partner B. Okay, because that's the best way, because you will be in completely two different networks, completely in two different kinds of business models. But I tell you, it's very difficult contractually to do that, because if A goes down, okay, then there is the mechanism is how you will move to B does not exist if you're two different cloud service provider, unless you have got an orchestration layer, how to really flip it in real time. It's tough. So if the first service provider, then what they say is, look, we will take responsibility as long as you have the secondary also with me, and it needs to be outside of the country. Which makes sense, because if it is in the country, more or less, if your primary goes down, your secondary is also going to go down. Okay. Now that really means that now we need to really worry about where the data sits. Okay, are you allowed to take the data outside? Say for some reason you're not allowed to take the data outside. That means the solution I cannot implement at all. Right? That's one of the things which we figured out as we read through the contracts. And again, in a data center case, when you run it very easy, a problem happens, you get 5 people, get onto a call, a bridge is opened, you resolve it. Right? You know whom to call, what to call. There is an escalation mechanism in place. But how do you actually solve that in a public cloud infrastructure? And then assuming that you have got different components in 2 or 3 different public clouds. And we have, if you see, we are a user of AWS, we use Azure, we use Singtel. I mean, to the extent, we might use even Ali at some point in time, right? So that means if you see a transaction flow, it actually goes through 4 different clouds before it is completed, right? So that's the whole thing, right? And seriously, right? If the whole business case is a lot of SMEs can use it, okay, and that becomes much more tricky, right? Because SMEs are so conscious about $1, they won't even give you half a cent extra, right? So there is an outage, then what do? Who's going to go fight with this cloud service provider to get it? Right? So we thought about all these things and see whether we can come up with some kind of a framework, right? When you can read it yourself, it's straightforward. So this was the problem statement which we are trying to address. As I said, this is going to evolve as we see more and more examples of cloud implementations in the country, and then if they're all going to be interconnected, then I think it is also going to take this whole thing to the next level. And what is very interesting is, I don't think there are many countries in the world who have got a framework like this. I mean, I would really think it's Singapore taking the lead again, to get these kind of responses, and we have also got good responses from the service provider. They're quite happy to participate in all these things and come up with some kind of a framework, because at the end of the day, it allows them to get certain kind of a certification or a credibility in terms of what we do, right? So that's a kind of a problem statement. I mean, have you guys had this issue before when you are trying to move into cloud or anything? Any comments, thoughts on this? Whether this is a worthwhile problem statement even to spend a significant amount of time? And when you did the project, have this come to your mind as to what happens when an outage happens? Has anyone asked you that question? Because in standard data center, it's very easy, right? You've got negative credits, people have to pay money, you've got all those kinds of things in place. And to be honest, we have exercised, some of those. And as a service provider, we have had our clients who have exercised it on it. Me saying that, look, you went down, so now you need to pay for it. Yeah. This is an example of outage, and there are a lot of outages which are happening as we speak, right? It is not that there was no reference to outage. I think the first one was quite very prominently. A lot of people know the whole Apple iCloud going in, and the same thing with Netflix on AWS. It had quite a number of issues. If you really look at it, right, these are all services which we use on a daily basis. Okay. And assume you are dependent on Google. I mean, I don't know, does anyone use Gmail for corporate? Okay, it's good, right? I mean, I know there are a lot of companies who use Gmail for corporate. I mean, when I joined Singapore, that was the first question asked to me, well, can we migrate to Gmail? Right? Hangout, right? I mean, if Google Hangout it doesn't work, you have got in trouble. If Skype doesn't work, it's in trouble. So if you really look at it, these outages are real. It happens. It affects people at every point in time, right? So now the whole question is now, how much of your business is dependent on all those things? Assume that you have got everything on as a service on a public cloud, and it goes down, then we will be in a bit of trouble. This one again, very interesting study. There are enough reference in Google. You can take a look at it, which essentially means when the first server outage happens, okay, there's almost 6,000 companies lost their data. Okay, and it's a real case. Okay, and pretty much the service provider came back and said, look, we cannot do anything about it. Whatever is gone is gone. Okay, it was quite significant. Okay, I mean, so if you see these are essentially the various thing has to happen. I mean, we can issue an apology, but if you lose your data, then I think it is you're not going to be a happy person. So if you see the reason as to why it happened is standard classic reason, right? I mean, typically, for me, if you're in a data center, these are the three things which always comes as reason. So that means whatever the kind of vulnerability any in-house data center have, the cloud service provider also have, because in my view, it's exactly the same, but at a different scale, it is happening. Can take a look at it. 6,000 companies. The big companies, were affected. Managed cloud services had an affected. So this one, I'll just go back. I mean, it's quite straightforward in terms of the impact, what it had on people. Okay, this is an interesting slide, right? So this is kind of the first server's response, or whatever they had in their contract, and people actually have signed it knowingly. Okay, and the assumption is someone has read through all these kind of things. If you really see, everything had a limit, everything, favored the service provider. Okay, I've not seen the cost of this, so I don't know, if it was at a really a low cost option, then all these things are expected, because even if you see in the classical data center situation, right? There's a huge difference between 99.9999 and 99.99, right? The cost goes up significantly for the last 2 nines, right? So I would assume the same kind of constraints would help, would be there for them. But I think the other thing which I would like you all to consider is just read through the contracts. I think it's extremely important. Okay, and if you see in most of the cases, you get a document to sign, you really have very little control to change any of these things. In fact, I again remember, I think it was an NDA with one of the service provider. It spoke about a lot of things, and then there was a word retail services mentioned in that, right? Because we are also in the retail business, but I could never figure out what it is. So I said, I cannot sign because there is a word retail services in your whole contract, because it said except retail services. It took almost 6 months for us to remove those 2 words, because we went back and forth, and the difficulty we had was no one was very clear on the implications of why that is there. Was there a precedence because they did something before and then they were not able to support, or they just wanted to exclude? It was not very clear at all, and both parties were so adamant that one party said I will not take it, and we said no, you need to remove the word, because for me I'm in the retail business. So we need to really spend time on it. The other challenges, the in-house resident lawyers, unless you have got someone who really understands all these technology, it's going to be tough. That means you have to rely on external parties. And as I said, every contract is different, and you have to spend significant amount of money to sort out all these kind of things. And this very classically says that pretty much, yes, you were with me, and we did our best to support you. Yes, we had an outage, and that's it. Thank you very much. We can't do much, right? If you have not understood the impact of it, it could be quite serious for lot of businesses, right?